When you look up at like a gleaming, towering skyscraper, it is, it's almost impossible to picture the muddy, empty hole in the ground that it started at.
Right, yeah, because we only see the finished product.
Exactly. We just see the sheer, imposing height of the glass and the steel, and our brains sort of trick us into feeling like it was simply, dropped out of the sky, fully formed and absolutely perfect.
Oh, totally. Like it just materialized there.
Yeah. But today, we are tearing apart that illusion.
Mhm.
We are dismantling the myth of the finished product by looking at, well, 14 of the most confrontational words ever written about mastery.
Which is saying something.
It really is.
Yeah.
So for the learner out there joining us today on this deep dive, whether you are, in the middle of a massive career pivot or trying to pick up a complex new language, or you are simply curious about how true, undeniable mastery actually happens, this is your blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
We are pulling our focus entirely onto a single, incredibly brief excerpt from a text called The Genesis of Expertise.
So brief.
Right. The entire source material today is literally 2 sentences for 2 words. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and on its face, a 14-word quote about starting your journey sounds like it sounds like it belongs on a cheap motivational poster in a corporate break room.
Oh, 100%. Like a picture of a mountain with the word success at the bottom.
Okay, but when you look past the apparent simplicity and you examine the human brain's deeply ingrained risk aversion mechanics, these words are actually, they're an aggressive psychological intervention.
Wow. An aggressive intervention.
Yeah, because brevity forces a concept into its most concentrated form, right?
Yeah.
There's nowhere for the underlying truth to hide behind, dense jargon or endless data points.
Right. It's just laid out bare.
It requires us to look at the exact mechanics of action, which is what we will dissect today.
Okay, so we'll start with the very first sentence of the text from The Genesis of Expertise. It reads, "Every expert was once a beginner."
What's fascinating here is the absolute nature of that very first word.
Yeah, it doesn't leave much wiggle room.
None at all. The author doesn't say most experts or, a majority of experts or even experts who didn't have natural talent. The source makes 0 exceptions. It just says every.
Right.
And this completely dismantles the pervasive myth of the innate expert, the prodigy who simply bypasses the starting line.
Which is crazy because we are, like, culturally obsessed with the idea of the prodigy.
Oh, absolutely.
The person who just wakes up and can play a complex piano concerto without ever having practiced a scale.
Yeah, the Mozart myth.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think we want to believe in magic because, well, frankly, it excuses our own lack of progress.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense.
But this text is violently shutting that door. It's demanding that we look closer and acknowledge that even the supposed genius had a tangible moment where they didn't know what a piano key was.
Right. By using the word every, this text effectively democratizes expertise. But, it also removes your safety net.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it strips away that intimidating alien quality that we project onto masters of a craft. It grounds the concept of expertise in a universally shared human experience.
Which is the experience of starting from absolute zero.
Exactly. From zero.
Let's talk about the friction of that zero state, because it goes right back to that skyscraper imagery I brought up. The empty lot phase.
The empty lot?
Yeah, think about looking at an empty lot right before a house is built. It's just dirt, weeds, scattered rocks. It feels deeply intimidating to look at that dirt if you were tasked with building something there.
Oh, for sure. It's overwhelming.
You look at the mud and think, how could this ever be a home? But this sentence, "Every expert was once a beginner," is forcing you to acknowledge that literally every mansion on Earth, no matter how grand, had to start as an empty lot.
Right.
There is no alternative construction method.
No, the empty lot is the ultimate representation of the beginner state. And the core psychological issue is that, as human beings, we inherently despise standing in the empty lot.
We hate the mud.
We hate it because the beginner state is incredibly vulnerable. It is a state of active incompetence, of making highly visible mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Of feeling foolish, really. Our egos just violently reject it. We look at the expert, the finished mansion, and we want to magically teleport into that state of completion without having to get our boots muddy.
Especially for an adult learner. I mean, if you are listening to this right now and you were trying to learn a new language, for example.
That's a brutal one.
It is. You are likely an intelligent, highly competent adult in your native tongue. You know how to articulate complex thoughts, negotiate, be witty.
Right.
But the moment you step into the beginner state of a new language, you are suddenly reduced to the vocabulary of a toddler.
Yeah, literally pointing and grunting sometimes.
Exactly. You sound foolish. And the friction of that loss of status is massive.
That cognitive dissonance is exactly what the word every targets. It's the gap between your sophisticated taste and your current clumsy abilities.
Hmm.
The text provides an undeniable equalizer to soothe that dissonance, because the person who is currently fluent in that language, the person who built that mansion you admire, they had to suffer through the exact same loss of status.
They had to sound like a toddler, too.
Exactly. They had to stand in the exact same mud you are avoiding right now. It is a mandatory toll on the road to mastery.
But, recognizing that everyone starts in the mud doesn't actually get the house built.
True.
Acknowledging the dirt doesn't pour the foundation. The hesitation, that fear of sounding like a toddler or making a mistake, it's still there.
Right.
So how does this text address that subsequent paralysis?
Well, it addresses it by shifting abruptly from a foundational truth to a direct, unyielding command. The second sentence begins with, "Start now."
Start now. Man, the friction between intention and action in those two words is massive.
It really is.
Because the source doesn't casually suggest, hey, you should start at some point when you feel ready.
Right, no suggestions here.
It explicitly, forcefully demands that the physical action happens now.
And this brings us into the profound philosophy of time within the learning process.
Okay.
The author specifically pairs the physical action, start, with the immediate present moment, now. Because now is the only actual space where the transition from beginner to expert can occur.
That makes sense.
You cannot start in the past. And despite our brain's best efforts to convince us otherwise, you cannot actually start in the future.
Because the future isn't real yet.
Exactly. The future is an abstraction where our ideal selves live. But those ideal selves never actually have to do the heavy lifting. The only tangible reality where learning, failing, and adapting physically takes place is the present moment.
So what does this all mean? Because, I need to pause us here and put back on this a little. On behalf of anyone listening who is dealing with high stakes.
Yeah, sure.
Is start now meant to be taken entirely literally? Like, if our listener is planning a massive career pivot, starting now carelessly can lead to absolute ruin.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, quitting a stable job today without a financial safety net or a transition plan, that isn't building momentum. It's self-sabotage.
Right.
So how does the text differentiate between reckless impulsivity and actual starting?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of how expertise is formed, start now is not a mandate for reckless impulsivity.
Okay.
It is about initiating a vector. Quitting your job with no plan isn't starting a new career, it's just ending an old one.
Oh, wow. That's a great distinction.
Right. Starting now is the immediate physical application of a microstep. It is a fundamental shift in posture from a passive state of contemplation into an active state of engagement.
I see.
It collapses the massive distance between the intention to do something and the physical initiation of it.
So it's the difference between declaring, I am going to completely change industries next year versus saying I'm going to send one networking email in this new industry right now.
Exactly. It emphasizes that the genesis of expertise isn't some magical future event that will miraculously occur when the stars align and, your bank account is perfectly padded.
Right. The stars never actually align.
They don't. It is a present tense choice to initiate forward movement, no matter how small that movement is.
That distinction between passive contemplation and active engagement,
Yeah.
it actually makes me think of a mechanical analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
Waiting to start until everything is perfect is kind of like sitting in a parked car, gripping the steering wheel, and trying to turn it with all your might.
Yeah.
You can turn the wheel all you want in a parked car, but the tires just grind against the pavement, and you don't actually go anywhere.
Not an inch.
Power steering only engages when the car has forward momentum. So start now is about creating that initial forward momentum so that you actually can steer. You cannot course correct a stationary object.
That mechanical reality is vital. You only gain access to feedback to course correction once you are in motion. When the text demands that you start now, it is directly attacking the human tendency to live entirely in the planning phase.
We love the planning phase.
We do, because planning is comfortable. Planning feels remarkably like progress, but it carries absolutely none of the vulnerability of actual execution.
Yeah, we all fall into the trap of the planning phase. It feels so productive.
Yeah.
We buy the new expensive notebooks. We download the highly rated software. We spend hours watching tutorial videos on how to do the thing we want to do.
Hmm.
We basically trick our brains into releasing dopamine as if we've actually accomplished the task.
Because in the planning phase, you haven't made any mistakes yet. Your vision of the skyscraper is still perfect.
Exactly.
The moment you start now, you have to look at the crooked foundation you just poured. The text forces you out of the sterile environment of planning and into the messy reality of doing.
So if start now gets the car rolling so the power steering kicks in, what is the force actively trying to slam our foot back on the brake?
That is the big question.
Because the text doesn't end there. The author felt compelled to add 3 more words. And here's where it gets really interesting. The final words of the source material are, "Don't wait."
Which forces us to look at why those words are there.
Right, because on the surface, looking at these 14 words, you might think the author made a careless editing error. Isn't that redundant?
That seems like it.
They just explicitly said, "Start now." Doesn't "start now" automatically, by definition, imply "don't wait"? Why did the author of The Genesis of Expertise feel the absolute need to include "don't wait" immediately following "start now"?
Right.
We have to figure out why this is a distinct mechanical instruction and not just, repetition.
Well, it is entirely distinct. Start now is an offensive maneuver. It is the positive forward action you are taking to get the car rolling.
Okay.
Don't wait, on the other hand, is a defensive command. It is a warning system.
A warning against what?
The author is anticipating the immediate psychological pushback that happens the millisecond you try to start now. They are warning us against the most dangerous, insidious illusion in the pursuit of mastery, the illusion of perfect timing.
Oh, the illusion of perfect timing. That is the ultimate killer of the beginner phase.
Yes, it is.
So going back to our listener who wants to pivot careers, they say, "I'll start when the macroeconomic environment is better. Or I'll start when the kids are older. Or I'll start when I have an extra 10 hours a week of free time."
And don't wait targets those exact rationalizations.
Yeah.
Because waiting is incredibly seductive. It rarely looks like laziness.
Right.
What makes waiting so dangerous is that it almost always masquerades as preparation.
Wow. Waiting masquerades as preparation. That hits hard.
Because it's so easy to justify. Right.
What entirely? Back to our language learner. You aren't procrastinating on actually speaking the language. You're just, spending 3 weeks researching the absolute best flashcard algorithm.
Dang it.
You're waiting to find the optimal learning path before you clumsily try to order a coffee in that language. You convince yourself that the delay is actually a strategic advantage.
You convince yourself you are doing the work, but you were still just grinding the tires of the parked car.
Right.
We tell ourselves we're gathering more information, that we are waiting for the ideal conditions to maximize our chances of success. But the expert, the true master, knows that ideal conditions are a myth.
They don't exist.
They do not exist. By commanding "don't wait," the text is exposing the uncomfortable truth that waiting is simply a defense mechanism. It is designed to protect the fragile ego from the messy, imperfect reality of being a beginner.
So it's the brain saying, if I wait for the perfect moment, maybe I won't have to be bad at this first.
Exactly. It's the secret hope that preparation will eventually compound into sudden expertise, allowing you to skip the mud entirely.
Which we know isn't possible.
Right. The text ruthlessly cuts that hope down. Don't wait means stop pretending that tomorrow's circumstances will magically grant you competence without the friction of failure.
Now, this raises an important question, and it's one we want to direct right at you, the listener. How often in your life, in your career, in your personal passions, are you substituting waiting for the right time for actual starting? How often are you sitting in that parked car, gripping the wheel, staring at a highly detailed map, and convincing yourself that you are already driving?
Sitting in the parked car, studying the map is incredibly safe. You cannot crash a parked car.
No.
You cannot take a wrong turn. You cannot look foolish, but you also cannot cover any ground.
Right.
The text "don't wait" is the author reaching into that parked car and turning the ignition key for you. It's a harsh, necessary disruption of your comfort zone.
It's forcing you to put the car in drive, pull out of the driveway, and navigate that first mile. It might be raining. You might take a wrong turn at the very first intersection. You might, stall the engine. But you only actually learn the topography of the road by feeling it under the tires.
The map is just theory.
Exactly. The driving, the actual messy navigation, is the genesis of expertise.
If you synthesize all the elements of this brief text, it moves far beyond a motivational quote. It outlines a complete brutal and profoundly optimistic life cycle of action.
Yeah.
It forces you to accept your own incompetence as a universal starting line. Every expert was once a beginner.
Right.
It gives you the specific present tense mechanism for change. Start now. And it provides the psychological armor necessary to defend that change against your own ego. Don't wait.
It's just staggering how much architectural weight is held up by these 14 words.
It really is.
We've taken literally 2 sentences from the genesis of expertise, and by tearing them down to the studs, we found a comprehensive operating system for learning. We've acknowledged that your current beginner status, whatever it may be, that intimidating, muddy, empty lot you are staring at, is the exact same dirt that every single master in the history of the world had to stand in.
The exact same dirt.
We've uncovered the friction and the ultimate power of immediate action, realizing that you must put the car in motion to access the power steering by choosing to start now.
Right.
And we've actively identified how to defend against the insidious trap of perfect timing, recognizing that waiting is just fear disguised as preparation by aggressively choosing to don't wait.
And bringing this directly back to your reality, the listener. Whatever new skill, whatever complex topic, whatever massive life shift you are intensely curious about right now, these words are your custom blueprint.
Absolutely.
It genuinely does not matter if you are trying to understand quantum physics, learn how to code, or lead a massive corporate team through a crisis. The fundamental mechanism of mastery does not change.
Yeah.
The genesis point is universal. The friction you feel right now is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is the physical sensation of the starting line. The text applies to you right in this moment, just as forcefully as it applies to anyone else.
It's universal, and
Right.
it demands an immediate response.
Yeah.
It is basically calling your bluff on all the brilliant plans you've been storing up for the future.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought to mull over.
Okay.
Something that builds directly on the mechanics we've unpacked today.
I'm ready.
If we know that every expert was once a beginner, and we know that starting immediately in the face of incompetence is the only way to bridge that gap, well, perhaps the true mark of the ultimate expert isn't just reaching the top of the skyscraper.
Oh.
Perhaps true mastery is the willingness to constantly, intentionally become a beginner all over again, to deliberately seek out the empty lot.
Wow.
The willingness to constantly become a beginner all over again, to look at the finished skyscraper, walk away from it, and purposefully return to the mud to build something entirely new, because you are no longer afraid of the dirt.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope this conversation has given you the exact mechanical push you need to get the car in motion. Don't let the imposing height of the finished product intimidate you. Remember the muddy hole in the ground it came from? Drop the illusion of perfect timing and take that first, clumsy, absolutely vital step today. Start now. Don't wait.